thought,
Of course.
oh my gosh.
Well, I look forward to your childhood memoirs.
Yes. I was a child then. Kid. 23, 22.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's approximately 12:45 p.m. My name is Mike Kelly. I'm the Chair of the Board of County Commissioners for Johnson County, Kansas. We are here on January 16th, 2025 for an agenda review for the business session that'll occur on January 23rd, 2025. At this time, I'd ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Commissioner Fast.
Aye.
Commissioner Myers.
Myers, aye.
Commissioner Brewer.
Brewer here.
Commissioner Hanslick.
Hanslick here.
Commissioner Ashcraft.
Here.
Commissioner Allenbrand.
Allenbrand, aye.
And Chairman Kelly.
Aye, all are present. Would the clerk please start with number 1?
Resolution number WD 25-002. Consider dissolving the Wastewater Development Advisory Committee.
Susan Pekarik here from Johnson County Wastewater to discuss this item. Ms. Pekarik, welcome back.
Good afternoon, Chairman and Commissioners. Thank you. Yes, the Wastewater Development Advisory Committee was formed in 2020 by the County Commission, and the purpose of that committee really was to serve as a conduit for the development community and work with Johnson County wastewater staff to evaluate and recommend improvements to our processes, our procedures, and our standards. Last January, the board, in a committee of the whole, directed the staff to review all of the boards and committees. And we met with the legal staff in February, and it was determined that the Wastewater Development Advisory Committee, or WDAC, should be dissolved because really the effort of that committee is duplicative of things that our staff are already doing. And so that's why we're here, is to recommend dissolving that committee.
Thank you very much, Ms. Pekarik. Questions, comments from the board, starting with Commissioner Allenbrand.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I appreciate you and your staff and also the legal team looking at duplication of services. When you're duplicating something and it's not cost-effective either because then your staff is just doing duplication of services. So full support. Thank you for doing that.
Thank you.
Commissioner Hanslick.
Thank you. Yes, I'm also supportive. I know that there have been times, there have been other committees in other circumstances where it's really the expertise of the staff that's needed. There's no policy-making decisions or advisory role for that particular committee. So you and I have had the chance to talk about that, and I'm very supportive.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Brewer.
I'm also supportive of this motion for the action agenda. I look at it a little bit of a different perspective. If we think about it, if we want our county government to do its best due diligence, sometimes you need to be able to tap in and have some folks that you have some conversations with. If we create a structure that is more cumbersome than helpful, you have a couple of things. Maybe some of the people you would normally tap to ask a question of are sitting on the committee, right? But they're also the ones you might be in contracting with, and then there's a conflict of interest. So you can't use the committee, you need to find others, and there's not a structure or pathway forward. So to me, this might have been created in the scope of trying to make more efficient government or a mechanism to have those conversations. Instead, it may have become more of a barrier than a bridge for you to kind of do your gut checks and check with other professionals in the field as you are going along the path on a project. So thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I appreciate all that's been said. I will also say I think it continues to be important that we receive feedback from those who are being served by Johnson County Wastewater. I understand that there are great mechanisms by which we already receive that feedback, and I encourage and know that that's going to continue based on the diligence of the staff at Johnson County Wastewater. At the same time as we look toward dissolving this committee, I want to make sure that we're also engaging in policymaking where we think about the future needs of wastewater as we continue to grow as a county, not only in terms of the square footage and mileage in which we serve with Johnson County Wastewater, but with the density that is coming to Johnson County. And I don't want anybody to have any preconceived delusions that we are not focused on that policymaking work that's going to be crucial to support Johnson County Wastewater as we continue to grow as a community. That's going to continue from this board in collaboration with Johnson County Wastewater, with our cities, with engineers, with the private sector. And I look forward to that continuing in appropriate forums.
Thank you.
Any further questions? I'm sorry, Commissioner Fast.
Yeah, I will say that, I mean, I really appreciate you send postcards out, like on the inflow program, it was when I went to the open houses, just buzzing because you did postcards, you did emails. I worked with through the city to notify, the emails, and the mayor I talked to and connected, so you were willing to do staff presentations at the city, so you really have a model, and then your website is easy access for public engagement.
Commissioner Ashcraft.
Apologies, Ms. Sater. Ms. Pekarik, on reflection, as I recall a number of years ago, 18 and 19, we had experienced a number of concerns expressed by some members of the public, some stakeholders about customer service and the responsiveness of wastewater staff, and I think that contributed to the creation of this committee. I'm trusting that we've taken steps to continue monitoring that, because I believe now you do some kinds of an annual survey.
Yeah, yes, we do a semi-annual survey. of our
Semi-annual
customers,
survey.
As well as surveys immediately after serving our development customers, so.
Very good. And so we've got other mechanisms in place now to help us assess our customer service responsiveness. And so that would be a clear duplication then of having a group like this. So I just wanted to be clear on that. Thank you.
See no further questions, Ms. Pekarik. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Would the clerk read item number 2, please?
Consider granting the necessary easements to the City of Overland Park in the northeast corner of Johnson County Wastewater's Douglas L. Smith Middle Basin Wastewater Treatment Facility property located at 10001 College Boulevard to facilitate the replacement of the Indian Creek Bridge on College Boulevard.
Again, Ms. Pekarik, thank you for addressing this matter for us.
Yes, good morning, or excuse me, good afternoon. So this project is a project in the city of Overland Park over College. It's actually related to the agreement that the board approved this morning, or excuse me, was read into the notes for the records this morning during agenda. You have a map on your screen there. And then in the green circle there, the zoomed-in portion, the city of Overland Park, as part of their improvement project, is requesting temporary easement construction so they can do some grading to tie in some of the new work that will be going in there with sidewalk and the bridge, and then also a new permanent utility easement so that they can relocate city's fiber within that easement, and it can be utilized for other utilities should they be needed. So this is located in the northeast corner of the Middle Basin property, and we don't have any known facilities or assets there, so we would recommend approval of these easements to the board.
Thank you, Ms. Pekarik, and no concerns with future expansion of Middle Basin with this ongoing utility easement?
That's correct, not in this location, right.
Thank you. Other questions or comments? Seeing none, Ms. Pekarik, thank you very much. Would the clerk read item number 3, please?
Consider authorizing a license agreement with the City of Olathe, Kansas for the purposes of MEDAC co-location at Station 52, 1725 North Renner Boulevard, Olathe, Kansas, 66061, and to provide usable space outlined in Exhibit A for Med-Act personnel, ambulance response vehicles, equipment, and supplies for a term of 5 years with a one-time payment to the City of Olathe in the amount of $174,233 to be effective February 1st, 2025, and authorizing the use of budgeted approved funds in an amount not to exceed $174,233.
And given the potential overlap between this item and the next, would the clerk also read item number 4 into the record, please?
Item number 4, consider authorizing a license agreement with the City of Olathe, Kansas for the purpose of MedAct co-location at Station 53, 14940 West 143rd Street, Olathe, Kansas, 66062, and to provide usable space outlined in Exhibit A for MedAct personnel, ambulance response vehicles, equipment, and supplies for the term of 5 years with a one-time payment to the City of Olathe in the amount of $196,697 to be effective February 1st, 2025, and authorizing the use of budgeted approved funds in the amount not to exceed $196,697.
Thank you. Scott Sayer here from the Department of Emergency Services. Welcome back, sir.
Thank you. Scott Sayer, Johnson County MedAct. Thank you, Chair and Commissioners, for allowing us to come before you this afternoon to present these two items. I will talk about them mostly together, but can certainly separate any of the questions for either station. So MedAct currently responds from various fire stations around the county, as well as independent MedAct stations that are owned by the county. As we evaluate our deployment models, response times, population density, geography, and geographic coverage, those are really the primary drivers of how we identify station locations. As these locations are identified, MedAct has historically evaluated the possibility of co-locating with local fire departments to create efficiencies and reduce costs. In some cases, it's not possible due to geography or facility constraints, but often it is. What we have before us today is standard license agreements with co-located fire departments. We have formalized these agreements with several other fire departments across the county, and the City of Olathe will be the next one once these are completed. The costing methodology that we use was developed in partnership with our facilities department and considers space utilization and operating expenses for both departments, as well as market rates in determining the appropriate cost for each station that we co-locate at. The first agreement is for Station 52 in the City of Olathe, and that's at 1725 North Renner. We've been in this station for many, many years now, and it provides a good base for ambulance service operations and is effective in supporting our response time and helping us to meet our time benchmarks. It also helps us to optimize emergency medical services to the City of Olathe as well as central Johnson County. The City of Olathe and the county have enjoyed a partnership in the delivery of emergency medical services for many years, and the contributions to these license agreements will allow MedAct to continue this partnership within these locations. The specific location, Station 52, serves over 27,000 addresses, and we respond to over 3,600 calls per year from that station. Really the only difference in these two agreements would be Station 53. It's located at 14940 West 143rd Street in Olathe, and from that station we serve over 29,000, almost 30,000 addresses and respond to over 3,400 calls per year. The City of Olathe Fire Department and MedAct desire to engage in this agreement to allow MedAct to use its designated areas of the fire station for the use and terms and conditions set forth within the agreement for a period of 5 years with the option to renew for an additional 5 years. And the City of Olathe has approved both of these agreements during a recent City Council meeting. And with that, I will stand for questions.
Thank you very much, sir. Questions or comments from the board on this one? Commissioner Ashcraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Sayer, a few questions, if I could. I appreciate the inherent logic of trying to formalize relationships between the cities. We've been doing this now for about, 5 years?
About then, yeah.
About 5 years. I was just wondering, I was trying to remember, is this based upon administrative policy or BOCC policy?
As far as having an agreement in place,
In terms of negotiating with the cities for cost, what do you call it, the costing methodology?
I believe that'd be under administrative policy.
Administrative policy?
I don't know if it's as formal as a policy. I'll look to add them to that. I know that we have a standard kind of formula that we use so that we were consistent with other locations.
And that's really where I was going.
Yeah.
I'm just not familiar with the formula, so I was hoping maybe if Mr. Barron or at some point, or Mr. Norris could just educate me on how that works. That was my main question there, so that would be helpful. So, and I am interested in that, Mr. Chairman, not to necessarily stick a finger in a socket, but these relationships with cities are very important, and we have had discussions on and off about the chargeback philosophies involving jail services. And I know we have a new sheriff, and I don't know if that's going to be something considered in the future. I just offer it as an observation. It's part of a larger issue in terms of how the governments support each other and how we cover those costs. So this just brought me an opportunity to offer that observation.
Well, and an important observation indeed, the relationships with the cities and the ability we have to jointly serve our residents in the best way possible, primarily in this instance to keep people safe and healthy, is of the utmost importance and worth revisiting. So thank you for the observation. Commissioner Brewer.
So Chairman and Mr. Sayers, I'll ask for your patience because I have a number of questions that kind of lead down a path.
Sure.
So my first question is, how many cities do we have co-location within fire stations of MEDAC?
So there are 8 different fire departments and districts within the county. So there'd be 6 municipal departments that we would co-locate within 2 districts.
And reading the briefing sheet for both of these resolutions, it indicated that you had a prior co-location relationship where a fee was not assessed, and now a fee is being assessed. Is it accurate well, let me ask this as a question. When we began co-location relationships within municipalities' fire stations, was that always a fee relationship?
So these agreements have come into place. The co-locations have been in existence for decades, going back well before my time, and I can ask our director to come up as well. He may have some more historical knowledge on that. A lot of these agreements that we had in place prior to a formal written agreement with a fee were handshake type of agreements. It was, you can live here, you buy the toilet paper, and we'll pay for your bedroom. So those were very informal and really didn't afford us any rights or protections to have an established base to operate out of. So if the city needed that facility for some other use or that space that we were occupying, there was really nothing to tie us into that space, and we could be asked to leave. So in these agreements with the formal agreement, we have much more right to that space, and then we're able to plan and project years out into the future. If something were to change, it would give us enough lead time to adjust our deployment from there.
So you anticipated my next question, and that was, if you had a pre-existing relationship where you had a co-location, was it formal in writing, or was it more, as you said, a handshake relationship? So in the formalization, in other words, a more written agreement, so there's a better consistency and reliability of what it is that what that space looks like, what portion of that space, all that, is when they moved from an informal to formal written, is that when fees came into place? Did that go hand in hand?
That is correct, yes. And there was cities and departments requesting those fees because of the space that we were occupying within their station. And that correlates with operations and maintenance costs, capital replacement projects that they were having, they were looking to us to, if we're going to use the space, to contribute to that space, and/or we would have to go find independent space from them.
So in the past, you may have had an informal relationship. There might have still been a fiscal aspect where informally something would arise, a cost would arise, and there was cost sharing in the past. Is that an accurate, is that fair to ask you? I don't know if I should be asking
That,
someone else.
I do not know the answer to that question, so I'll ask Director Davis if he knows. If not, we can research that.
Yes, ma'am. Paul Davis. So prior to these formal agreements, it was the handshake, as we discussed, but it was also tied to medical supplies. And we were providing medical supplies and bags and equipment and stuff like that. But it was really stretching our budget on the support services side. And so it was becoming unaffordable. So knowing that they were seeking an agreement, we developed these agreements. Our first one was with Fire District 1 at their new station some years ago, and we devised a cost method, and that's applied per square foot for replacement and for operations. And it was also the way for us to work with our legal and facilities to manage these agreements so we could determine what the costs were going to be and come to a mutual agreement. So we weren't breaking the bank, and so we didn't have disparity across the board. So that's why we've got the methods that we have in place, but also to control the lease cost.
So what I'm hearing is even when they were informal, there was still a cost to the department, to the MEDAC department. It just might have been in supplies in that relationship. By formalizing an agreement and formalizing a cost, you're able to budget and understand what your rights are to that space and what your costs are going to be. Is that an accurate summation?
Yes, that's very clear. Thank you. It is
So
exactly.
my next question then is, in the briefing sheets, it references a one-time fee and a 5-year term. So in my world, I would think of that as almost, because I even did, the rough calculation on the back of a napkin of what that yearly cost would be, right, over a 5-year term. Is the one-time into infinity, or is the one-time a one-time fee within that 5-year term? And if you were to renew another 5-year term in the same space, there would be an expectation of another fee. So define better for me what one-time means.
So the one-time fee is for the duration of this agreement.
Of the
if
5
there were-
years.
Yep. If there were renewal, it would be recalculated based on the market rates then.
So in a way, we are basically doing a lease of space. It's a lease agreement for
Yes.
space. And this is the calculated formula based on market rate and such to back into that.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
The questions, Commissioner Hanslick.
Thank you. Following up on those astute questions from our new commissioner, my question is, the one-time fee, will there be any other money needed to be changed hands? You mentioned sharing supplies or medications, or will that be completely separate now?
That's now completely separate. So a lot of the previous agreements that we did have in place were primarily operational type of agreements for supplies for response and that sort of thing, not really dealing with living arrangements or rented square footage. So the cost that we provide to them gives us the space to use. EMS supplies, they buy on their own when they need to replace them because they're expired and things like that. If we use EMS supplies on a call scene, that's still a MEDAC expense.
Thank you.
So
I want to make sure everybody else.
everybody else, and just to confirm, sir, the renewal term fee is contemplated in each of these agreements. It's a bit of an acceleration.
Correct.
Given the additional 5-year term, but that is spelled out in section 3.2.
Yeah, and if you look in the exhibits, there's also the spreadsheet that shows how we cost out per year, per square foot, per usage of that station. And that gets a little bit at what Commissioner Ashcraft was asking as well, is it shows you the price per square foot, any inflationary factor that's included within there, and then each year of the duration, obviously it's included in there to cover cost as they increase in the future.
Appreciate it. Commissioner Brewer, if you had follow-up?
My only follow-up is, I'm sure a facility has a lifetime, right? When the facility is either outdated or not in the, so when I think of lease for space agreement, you always have that variable of when does it make more or better economic sense to build and own, and when does it make better economic sense to lease? And you got to factor in things like life of a building and all those fun things. When you guys think about lease versus building, because I'm sure this is very much based on locating MEDAC in locations throughout the county to assure that you're meeting your goal for short response times, right? I just want to know if that gets factored into the delta of I'm going to take a lease of space approach over X amount of time. This is what probably the cost will look like that we'll carry for that lease space versus building and what that cost would look like. I just didn't know, as strategically as we think about that, if we ever factor that aspect into it.
Sure. And when, in conjunction with our facilities department, when we go into these lease agreements, they do examine the buildings and look at them to determine square footage and condition, looking at CAD drawings and other things like that. Within the cost methodology, there is also cost for capital replacement. So within the agreement, it's the expectation of the city or district who owns the station to maintain it in a condition that is usable and reasonable, that meets our county standards as far as building. So we do build that into the agreement to make sure that it can't just run down and be in a dilapidated condition. And if it does reach that, then we have recourse within the agreement to recoup our costs and to exit the agreement if we need to. But typically, when we look at these areas for station development, a lot of these stations have been long-standing locations in parts of the county that are already well-developed. And that's why the primary focus is to stay where we're at if possible, because the cost to acquire land and new construction cost far exceeds the amount that we spend in a 5, 10, or 20-year lease with the department. And with those assurances within the agreement that our space is going to stay in a good condition, we're very comfortable entering into those longer-term agreements with these departments.
Thank you.
Mr. Norris?
If I could just add real quick, back in 2021, which is before me, but there was a station on Row with the Northwest, with CFD1, Consolidated Fire District 1. They were looking at relocating their station and then invited us to co-locate. We did that kind of analysis at the time of does it make sense to co-locate or even purchase the station from the district? And in that case, we purchased the building from the district and refurbished that ourselves. So that analysis goes on absolutely every time we look at each station.
Thank you.
Commissioner
I
Fast?
just want to follow up on that. Part of that was also call time. It's hard to have the same distance and call time located in the fire station. And so, I mean, that, because I was like, why can't we locate it with the brand-new fire station?
Yeah, and part of the challenge that we face as MEDAC is our jurisdiction is the entire county. Each district and city has the jurisdiction of their district or city, so their boundaries sometimes constrain their station development, and it doesn't always align. Like Adam just said, in that case, we really needed to stay where we are at because of the response time performance.
Commissioner Hayes?
Just wanted to point out, as I'm looking at the Exhibit B for the Olathe 53, there is a $5.20 capital replacement plan allowance per square foot, and you mentioned that, so it's in that cost.
Yeah,
model.
that, and that helps ensure that they maintain carpet, paint, roof, driveways, all those sorts of things.
I appreciate the way that this agreement is laid out in protection for the county and the requirement on behalf of the city of Olathe to keep the space in a condition suitable for the intended use of EMS. And it lists out a few, including but not limited to, statements as to the condition thereof. Additionally, I was mentioned by several commissioners, as we continue to maintain those call times that are crucially important to EMS and MedAct, we give ourselves the opportunity, if in the future it's necessary, to build a new facility and to exit this agreement in a period of 180 days. And then whatever has been paid up front for the term, whether it's the first term or the second term, receive a pro rata return of the unencumbered or unutilized funds. Forgive the terminology interchanging there. But I think this sets us up very well. One curiosity I had was you talk about the addresses and the number of calls for these particular fire stations. Just again, out of pure curiosity, one, 27,000 addresses, 3,600 calls. The other, 29,000 addresses, 3,400 calls. What does the trend look like for these particular EMS stations, if you know, and if not, I'm happy to follow up with you. But in terms of the number of calls and the, I guess, demand upon your services for these particular stations?
Certainly, calls across the county are continuing to increase, and we've seen that steadily for the last decade. Olathe specifically, certainly they continue to annex more land. More people are moving into the city. The population had grown to such a number, and the call volume within the city of Olathe, we're actually building a station that's breaking ground this year for West Olathe, not too far from here. Because the call volume had increased so much, we needed an additional ambulance within the city to help meet our response time. So these specific stations, those over 3,000, 3,400 calls, that's a busy unit. And those are some of the busier units we have, same concentrated in the central part of Overland Park, are really population hubs and drivers for our response.
Well, and just one of the notes as we continue to think about the future of Johnson County, the budget constraints that we have, consistently, the most important thing that people tell us about Johnson County is they want to feel safe here. And a very important part of that is call times and response from EMS. And so I appreciate you noting that in the increase in call volumes that you are experiencing, and just something for us to continue to be cognizant of as we continue to make policy determinations moving forward. I'm supportive of both of these, and I thank you very much for the important work that you and your team do.
Thank you very much.
Further questions or comments at this time? All right, then we'll move on. Thank you, sir. To item number 5, please.
Consider approving the December 12th, 2024 business session minutes. Commissioner Brewer was not an official member of the board at that time.
Any questions on those minutes? Seeing none, how about number 6, please?
Consider approving the December 19th, 2024 special business session minutes. Again, Commissioner Brewer was not a member of the board.
Any comments on the December 19th special business session minutes? Seeing none, item number 7, please.
Resolution number 010-25, application number W24-436-CUP-LE. Consider a request from Martin Marietta, Kansas City, LLC, for an amendment to their existing conditional use permit for expansion of mining area and continued operation of the surface rock quarry known as Sunflower Quarry, including mining, blasting, rock crushing, rock stockpiling, rock sales, and concrete plant, located at 34135 West 95th Street, south of 95th Street, west of Kill Creek Road, and north of 111th Street.
Mr. Penley, welcome back.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Chairman. Good afternoon, Commissioner Sean Pendley, County Planning staff. As indicated, this is a request from Martin Marietta, Kansas City, LLC, for an amendment to a conditional use permit to allow for expansion of a quarry and continued operations for the Sunflower Quarry. As indicated here on the vicinity map, the subject property is located generally south of DeSoto, south of 95th Street, and north of 111th Street and west of Kill Creek Road. This is also adjacent to the City of DeSoto recent annexation for the Astra Enterprise Park and Panasonic battery plant located to the west. This is an aerial photo of the existing quarry site. The subject property has a total of 885 acres that is leased property, and as indicated on this map, that is the area that's in the red boundary. So there is additional land surrounding the quarry that's also used as buffer. Their quarry haul access, the quarry haul road that allows access to the quarry is located on the west of the site, and it intersects with 95th Street to the north. This haul road is located on the Sunflower redevelopment property. At this time, they're going through a process of transferring the land to Johnson County Park and Rec District. That has not been completed at this time, but they do have an agreement for that haul road, and that does plan to remain as is existing. The surrounding area is generally consists of RUR zoning agricultural with some single-family homes on 10-acre lots. This is a map showing the current conditional use permit, the approved conditional use permit site plan for the quarry. The conditional use permit was approved in 2020, the current amendment. And that CUP was approved with a term of 5 years with a 5-year renewal to be reviewed and granted by BOCC upon compliance with all of the CUP stipulations. So at the time in 2020, rather than a 10-year term as the applicant was requesting, the board approved the 5-year with a 5-year renewal that would come back before the board. So that was scheduled to be brought back this year. However, now the applicant is requesting an amendment to that. The approval in 2020 was to allow for an additional 53 acres to the mining area. And so that is the area shown in the yellow outline on this map. It's area 2NE, and it's 53 acres just to the east of the existing quarry. The permitted quarry limits at this time are the area outlined in blue. This plan also does show, and was showing at that time, green areas that were shaded in. Those were reserved as future mining areas. They were not permitted with the CUP in 2020. However, the applicant did indicate that that's the area they plan to expand. And just additional background on the quarry, the first conditional use permit for this quarry was approved in 1991, and there have been 4 renewals approved since that time that do include expansions of the mining area. This is the map showing the proposed quarry expansion for the conditional use permit amendment. So this shows the same area, the lease boundary is still the same, 885 acres, and it now shows the approved 2NE area that was approved in the blue boundary. So with that approval in 2020, the total quarry limits at this time are 353 acres. And the applicant is proposing an expansion to the quarry to the east. That's the area outlined in yellow. That's designated as 2NE, NEE, and it's in the yellow dashed area. So the map just shows those boundaries. And again, they do also still show an area for future green reserved areas to the south. That's 2SE. That is not proposed to be included with the CUP at this time. Part of the reason why the applicant is requesting an increase or an amendment to the CUP is for an increase in rock, demand for rock in this area. That does supply aggregate for a variety of construction projects, and the increased demand for rock at this time has been increasing faster than what was expected. That's why Martin Marietta is requesting expansion of the quarry at this time, and they are requesting a term of 10 years for the CUP. This is a more detailed site plan showing the quarry development plan. This just shows a little bit better the aerial photo of the surrounding area. So again, that buffer area, that's anything outside of the blue and yellow boundaries for the mining limits, will remain as buffer area. So there are a significant group of existing trees, and those will remain around all of the permitted boundary area for the mining limits. And so no mining or other quarry activities are permitted outside of those areas. This is the mine plan that just shows the sequence and phasing of the mining. The area, again, for the proposed expansion is highlighted in purple. That's 40.57 acres. And this mining sequence plan just shows general direction for quarrying activity. They're in the area 2NE at this time. Generally, they're working south. And then upon completion of that, they will generally work towards the east if permitted in the area 2NEE. As part of the quarrying operation, Martin Marietta is required to reclaim property as they continue quarrying. This map is a reclamation plan that does show the areas that have been quarried and the areas that have been reclaimed. Every year they're required as a part of the stipulation of the CUP to provide a reclamation status map. So that does show the areas that have been reclaimed. And this process of reclamation involves backfilling the pits and then covering with topsoil and seeding the areas to revegetate the former quarry areas. And there's a requirement for 1 acre of land to be reclaimed for every 2 acres of land disturbed. They are actually exceeding that ratio for reclamation. And there is also a reclamation agreement and a bond or a letter of credit that goes along with this requirement for the reclamation plan. This is the buffer and screening plan for the quarry. They are showing for the expansion area, all those existing trees that will remain around the expansion, and they're proposing new landscape berms and trees to be installed around the south and east sides of the new expansion area. So with the setbacks, there are required setbacks for quarries, and this plan does show the setbacks on the north and south, to the north and south of the proposed expansion to be 750 feet from the nearest property lines, and the expansion is 1,343 feet to the closest residence to the north and east. According to county regulations, the minimum setbacks for quarries are 750 feet to the nearest property line and 1,000 feet to the nearest residence. So they meet or exceed all required setbacks with this proposed expansion. These are just some photos of the proposed expansion area. The photo on the left is a view from Kill Creek Road looking to the west. The area 2NEE will be behind these existing trees, so the tree row will remain there in the background, and the quarry will be behind that. The photo on the right here is a view from 103rd Street looking north towards the proposed expansion area, and this is the area where they'll be installing additional landscape berms and trees. These are some photos of the existing quarry. These photos here are of the plant area, which is located on the far west area, west side of the site. You probably can't see it very well in this picture, but just beyond this is the Panasonic battery plant under construction. So this is on the far west side, and this is additional detailed equipment of the mining or the plant area. And finally, these are some photos of areas that have been reclaimed. So these are former quarry areas that have been filled and revegetated. So this just shows examples of those reclamation areas. Just some additional background information on the quarry. They are subject to blasting regulations, and Martin Marietta does have a valid blasting permit. They have been in compliance with all county requirements according to the CUP and state and county regulations for blasting. County staff also does conduct annual inspections of the quarry, and we provide a report annually for that status of the CUP compliance. The West Consolidated Zoning Board held a public hearing for this application on December 18th, 2024. Several neighbors attended that hearing, and 5 members of the public spoke with concerns regarding the quarry expansion, blasting area, and related issues with the quarry. The applicant and staff answered the questions, and the zoning board did recommend approval of the conditional use permit by a vote of 5-2 with the stipulations outlined in the resolution. Staff would be happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Pendley, thank you very much. Commissioner Allen Brand, this is in your district. I'll let you go first.
Thank you, Chair. And I've said it before, and it's, when things start changing in a district and growth starts happening, it's, the rock quarry's been there for a long time. In fact, I was able to find it was operating, I think, back in 1950. I have a feeling it probably came with part of the sunflower ammunition, when that was going on, could have been part of this. But again, you said, when you discovered that they were operating and at one time they were under the city, you went out and did CUP with them in 1991. And there still ended up being a lot of concerns. They were blasting on Saturdays, early mornings. There was no perimeter. The new management group that's in there, Martin Marietta, has done an unbelievable job trying to meet with the community. They operate, if I have this right, between 2 to 4 p.m. So there's no early morning, no weekends. So they have been very, meeting with the residents, and for, like I said, the past ownership, there was major problems. The staff will continue to do an inspection every year. Even going to a 10-year, you're going to go out, and if there's issues going on, you'll be able to address it. I think it's also important to know that the setback of 1,000 feet, other counties have somewhere around 300. They far exceed that. I did check with the city of DeSoto. I know that there's some residents in Cedar Creek and Villa Portions. There didn't seem to be any huge complaints, but they do feel some of that blasting. So I do want to say that the last couple of years they have had, they always have an open house. We're all invited to it. They invite all the residents, the city of DeSoto, all residents to come out there. The fire department goes out. They have hot dogs, play in the rock. I didn't play in the rock, but so I did attend that open house, and I have the last 2 years because I want to keep up on what's going on up there. So even though I know it's difficult, this is something that's been in place for numerous years. I had a gentleman ask me once about New Century Airport, could I stop the helicopters going at night? Well, that's Black Hawk. I can't, that's military. You can't stop it. So it is, it's difficult, when you have something that's already there. But I do feel that this group has worked really hard to maintain the relationships and do the best job possible. I just wanted to say that.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Commissioner Myers.
And I may be repeating some of the things that Commissioner Allenbrand just spoke to, but what I'm hearing is that this quarry has been there long-term. Martin Marietta is in complete compliance, and they exceed or meet required setbacks.
That is correct.
Commissioner Ashcraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Penley, could you elaborate a little bit on the objections that were expressed by the residents, and were there any new concerns from a historical perspective with this expansion?
No, good question, Commissioner. The concerns from the neighbors are generally related to the specific issues for blasting. The ground vibration is pretty significant, very close proximity to a quarry, and the air blast, the noise. So there are set limits on that, and Martin Marietta has been in compliance with that. But that was the concern, is just the effects of blasting and the fact that the proposed expansion does get closer to the residences on Kill Creek Road and 97th Street to the north. So, and they were concerned about dust. That was another issue that was brought up. There are stipulations for dust control that the applicant is required to abide by on the concrete plant, on the plant area to the west of the site and the Hall Road. So those were the primary concerns, and they really were very similar to the concerns in 2020 as well. Same concerns.
Okay. Follow on, Mr. Chair. Please. So any additional mitigation efforts, particularly related to the blasting and its vibration effects on residents? I understand that they're doing it during daylight hours, but still the vibration. Is there anything that can be or will be done?
Yes, Martin Marietta has actually been very responsive to any complaints that have been received by neighbors and when county staff notifies them as well. They have been implementing changes to their blasting practices using smaller charges and reducing certain impacts related to blasting. They actually, there are actually stipulations as part of the CEP that require a greater threshold for blasting, and they're well below that. So they actually are below the standards that's even allowed by county regulations for blasting. So that is what Martin Marietta has done to try to address those issues regarding the impacts of ground vibration. But that's been the primary change that with the blasting operator and the contractor that they use. They're using smaller charges and
okay. One last item, Mr. Chair. Recently, maybe the last couple of days, I received, and I suspect all commissioners received, a fairly extensive PowerPoint presentation. I would appreciate visiting with you on the item generally, and anything that Have you seen that PowerPoint presentation?
Yes, thank
Okay.
you for reminding me. Forgot to mention there were several public comments included in your packet, and yes, that gentleman did speak at the West Zoning Board as well, but yeah, happy to meet with you and go over any other questions.
Well, it seems to be a thoughtful presentation. I'd like to
Yeah.
get your take on it, please.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Brewer.
First of all, Mr. Penley, I appreciate you and Mr. Leisig sitting down with me and going into detail, prepare for this meeting. So I noted a couple observations in our meeting together, and I really just have two questions for you. To build on Commissioner Ashcraft's question around kind of what do they do proactively, I think I saw in the meeting minutes you provided me from the December 18th meeting, and I think you shared in the meeting you had with me, that they do offer pre-blast surveys, both for somebody who's an existing homeowner who has not had a pre-blast survey, and then if new build is contemplated, in that new build process. And I'm not even going to pretend to be an expert on what a pre-blast survey is, but just wanted to point that out. And question, in the minutes of the December 18th meeting, when we talk about the reclamation, and I appreciate it that you noted in the presentation that they are pretty responsive to do reclamation of land that they're no longer using for coring, if that's the right term. And in the minutes from the December 18th meeting, the question was asked, what does that mean? It sounds like there's about 8 inches of topsoil that are laid down, is what I remember seeing in the minutes. Don't quote me. But there's a certain depth of topsoil that's laid down that vegetation can grow in. So my first question is, when quarry land has been reclaimed and topsoil has put back down and vegetation begins to grow and all that, is it buildable? Is it developable for other things? I don't know, so I thought I'd ask.
Yeah, that's a good question. I do not know the details for building and foundation and subgrade for structures on an area that's been reclaimed. However, I do know that I think it is possible to be done, yes, but as part of any building permit, there's a requirement for foundation details and grade requirements. They would have to meet that, so there might be compaction required or something. It is possible to build on a former quarry area. However, the owners of the property in this area have no plans for redevelopment. Matter of fact, included in your packet is a conceptual reclamation plan of the site. And what they envision at this time is just this to become open space and vegetated area and wetlands. So some of these areas would be remaining as permanent water bodies, but it could be potentially, development could occur on them, or it could become parkland or just open space.
So if it's more likely that quarry space is not as desirable to build on, long into the future, we may be regaining some open fields and spaces that is for nature, not for building or agriculture. Then I appreciate it that the company gave advance notice when they took the 2NE, when that process was happening. They were already signaling that 2NEE, what we're talking about today, and then even further in the future, what we're not discussing but still being identified, 2SE. But I'm sensitive, like Commissioner Allenbrand is, these are types of companies, types of activities that were occurring kind of on their own, out in open space. And as we grow as a county, we have more housing that gets closer to that, and you have that tension. So my other question for you is, I believe in our conversation, am I correct that north of the red line that's above 2NEE, the city of DeSoto has annexed that parcel for potential housing development?
Most of all of the parcels to the north of the quarry lease area has now been annexed in the city of DeSoto. I do not know the details yet as to what plans are for redevelopment, but what we have heard is that there is a possible development of a new residential subdivision to the north. That property has not yet been rezoned, but it is in the city of DeSoto. It is possible that there could be additional residential development built in that area. And that would be subject to the city regulations, since that now has been annexed in the city of DeSoto.
And the voluntary open house, or maybe it's in their permit, I don't know, but they do that annual, Commissioner Allen Brand noted they do like an annual open house. Is it around the time that they do, is there a permit renewal or review that happens annually?
Yes, an annual blasting permit. And they send out notices to all properties, I believe it's within 1,500 feet, when they do a blasting permit. In addition, as a stipulation of the CUP, Martin Marietta will be sending out pre-blast survey notices to all properties within, I believe it's a half mile, for any new residential developments or any property owners who have previously declined the pre-blast survey. But yes, to answer the question as far as the annual notice, the blasting permit does require notice to all properties within 1,500 feet.
And Commissioner Allen, you have shared that they've been very responsive in doing that.
Yeah, can I make a couple comments, Chair?
Absolutely.
Just to help you with.
I'm sorry.
Thank you. So, yeah, they hold this every year since the new ownership or the new management team came in. They have done this every year, and they will take you out and tour you around so you see everything that's going on. They talk about what future, what future development they may be doing. So they really do bring the community in. My home's a lot further away, but I was also told about the quarry being there. So I think most people who realize when you purchase out there that that quarry's been there for a long time. It doesn't make it any better, but it's just a reality. And I can also say that the city of DeSoto, they're going to probably have more manufacturing, and they're already looking at where housing's going to be. So who knows if that's going to be housing there or not, but they're annexing a lot in. They annexed in to do, there's probably going to be more manufacturing, more, is what we learned yesterday. And just to let you know that being on the Planning Commission in the city of Lenexa, if you look at part of City Center, those were underground, where that hospital's going, that was all underground tunnels. And so if you purchase any land over there, they disclose that and you can build depending on, but this ownership doesn't have any intent. They're looking again like parks, wetlands, so just to give you a little history.
Thank you.
Let me jump in here real quick. Mr. Penley, what's been the conversation with the city of DeSoto?
Oh, I had that.
City staff was notified of this application, communicated with the city manager and the planning director at the city, so they're aware of this application, which is very similar to the previous application in 2020. Just another thing to note regarding that, the city of DeSoto and Martin Marietta do also have a agreement for the road maintenance for 95th Street, because 95th Street is in the city of DeSoto, and Martin Marietta does have an agreement with the city of DeSoto. So they're aware of this application and aware of all the quarry plans.
Okay, so no negative feedback, at least at this point?
No, we've not received any comments back regarding this particular application at this time. We did have comments or questions, I think, at the time in 2020, and the city has no concerns regarding this application that we're aware of.
Commissioner Hanslick.
Thank you. It seemed when we approved the 5-year CUP back in 2020 that was a long time of a period of the CUP, and now here it is. I do remember at that time, one of the major questions was, are there any homes there around the perimeter that were built prior to the quarry being there? And if I recall correctly, the answer was no, that nobody is close to there who would not have known there was a quarry there. And then I think that's question one. The other question relates to something Commissioner Allenbrand said are there disclosures when someone does buy there to say there is a quarry nearby? That may be not within your department's purview, but if someone's buying the house, is that part of the disclosure or required disclosure, I would hope?
Yeah, I certainly do not know that is what is disclosed to property owners with anyone buying or building a new home around the area. But I will say, to clarify, that is correct. In 2020, there was a lot of discussion about homes and when they were built around the quarry. The majority of the new homes in the immediate area are new since the late 90s and early 2000s. However, there were some homes that were along Kill Creek Road prior to the quarry being approved in 1991. I don't know the number, but there were some. So those along Kill Creek, there are some in that area that were predate the quarry. But the majority of those, especially on the south area, were built after the quarry was started. That's true.
And do you know, are those homeowners, are they, do they object to this, that have been there prior to it?
I don't know for the specific property owners who was in objection, but I do know that there were some owners that lived along Kill Creek Road that did attend the West Zoning Board meeting, and they did express concerns regarding this application. But they were also, they were already aware of the proposed expansion. But yeah, there's residents from Kill Creek Road, 97th, 111th. They're neighbors from all around.
Thank you.
Sure. Commissioner Allen Brand.
Chair, I just wanted to let you know, you may not have heard me, but I met with the city of DeSoto and the city manager yesterday, Adam Norris and myself within the group, and they're in support of this. So.
Thank you. Mr. Penley, tell me about, and forgive the walk into your business here, but blasting regulations. Obviously, technology changes quite a bit, right? How often have we, as a Board of County Commissioners, reviewed and approved blasting regulations? Obviously, the state has their own regulations. How often is that revisited as a practical determination?
I would have to check with our building official to be sure, but I do know we look at those annually just to see if they're in compliance or if they're consistent with the state regulations. From what I understand, the county regulations are the same as the state regulations in terms of blasting. There are, in terms of looking at practices and technology and improvements in blasting, this conditional use permit has stipulations that exceed the requirements of the county and state. So there are lower thresholds that are allowed for blasting, the air blast limits, so the decibels have to be lower, and the ground vibration limits have to be lower than our county and state requirements. So actually the CUP stipulations include greater restrictions on blasting than even are allowed, generally speaking, for quarries. Excuse me. Martin Marietta has noted that, and they've been very responsive and very open to changing their blasting practices to meet those lower standards. You're still going to feel it, of course. The neighbors are still going to feel the ground vibration and hear the blast, but they are blasting at a lower rate than what would be allowed at a typical quarry in the state.
You said there's been, first permitted in 1991, and that there's been 4 renewals since then.
Yes.
What's been the average length of the CUPs that have come before us previously?
Most of them have been 5-year renewals. I believe the initial CUP was 10 years, and then most of the renewals or amendments have been 5 years. And like with the last one, you had a hybrid. You had a 5-year with a 5-year renewal upon compliance with all stipulations.
So as I'm reviewing your briefing sheet, it indicates that the mining limits that are currently being mined have about a lifespan of 3 to 4 additional years prior to reclamation, and that 2NEE has an estimated lifespan of 10 years, which would be the entire term of the CUP. I understand it sounds like the diligence of Martin Marietta precedes them, and we appreciate that. My, I guess, concern, area of conversation is the change in the city of DeSoto and the surrounding areas here in the last 10 years have been immense. Heck, in the last 5 years, they've been incredibly immense. By permitting 2NEE here, we are now permitting mining at the closest we've been to a residence in the history of this quarry, correct?
That is correct.
And with the potential growth to the north or potential permitting that's beyond our purview, would be the purview of the city of DeSoto, you could potentially have lot splits there to the northeast and potentially have a new residence that's even closer than the 1,300 feet, which is the closest home that would be to 2NEE as currently contemplated, right?
That would be correct. Yes.
And so I'm just curious as to why 10 years is being contemplated here as opposed to 5. And I'm just looking for a little bit more understanding on that process.
Yeah, that's a good question. And that certainly, the term was discussed at the zoning board as well, and it does vary from the time it's allowed. Our regulations do allow terms for up to 10 years for quarries. Staff felt that the 10-year term in this case was appropriate, although it is getting closer to residential areas. We felt it was appropriate in this area because what they're proposing meets or exceeds all the required setbacks. They have buffers surrounding the site with all the trees and berms and landscaping they're going to provide. And that would be really the ultimate expansion that would be allowed in this area to the east of the quarry. We felt that that was appropriate. They've been in compliance with all of the stipulations in the previous term. They're, in some cases with a conditional use permit, if we have had some past violations or any even issues or complaints, and we're going to get complaints for blasting just because they're close to a quarry, but if there's been any violations, we have concern about that. Here, since we have had no complaints and there have been no issues with the operator, we felt that we agreed to that term for this application. But certainly we do understand with changing area and the surrounding properties and city, we certainly understand that, and Martin Marietta is aware of that as well. But they're requesting the 10-year term, and staff felt it was appropriate in this case, given all of the stipulations and restrictions that are in place.
I appreciate that. I'll pass. Commissioner Myers.
So is it not true that the 5-year term that was just done before has, what they've found out is they've gone through that 5-year term with needs of their materials much faster than what they were anticipating?
That is correct. They're producing rock faster, at a faster rate than what was expected in 2020, and that could be spurred by some of the redevelopment of the area in the Astor Enterprise Park to the west, but just in general, they're supplying rock at a faster rate, so they're needing to come back, and they will be out of quarrying areas before the next 5-year term would have been up. That's correct. That's why they're asking for the expansion now.
Commissioner Brewer.
Thank you both. You made me thoughtful about two other things. One of the things in the minutes from the December 18th meeting is that the number of blasts year to year has slowly been increasing. I'm not going to speculate, but you also shared that they've changed some of their blast techniques to make less of an impact. So I don't know if they're using lower charges, so they need to do more, their blast number increases. I believe they do one a day, as Commissioner Allenbrand shared, and they usually schedule them for 2 unless they have a low pressure because of how that works with noise and materials and stuff like that. Their kind of plan B is to go up to like 430 to let that low pressure move. You also share that the land in the red, kind of like, we've got the property line, right? And then we've got the red line. And that buffer zone, a lot of that red line, am I correct, is leased land?
That is correct. All of the property within the red boundary of the entire site is leased. Martin Marietta leases it from various property owners in this whole area.
So one of the things we discussed in the pre-meeting that you and Mr. Leisig had with me was, I asked, do we know what the terms of all that lease land around, and is there always a chance that the leaser may not, want to renew the lease with the company? And I'm just wondering, as the chairman talks about the pressures of development as DeSoto continues to grow, is there an outside chance? And we can't make a decision based on ifs and maybes, right? But so there's uncontrollables, but it makes me sensitive to the fact that northeast, that little chunk that goes more to the east and north, that DeSoto has annexed, and then it abuts that line of lease land. What happens when that land gets more and more desirable, right? And then what that tension might look like. And I'm only asking these questions because I think Commissioner Allenbrand and myself, with the districts that we cover, these are issues that are popping up a little bit more frequently, right, as we see a higher concentration of folks. So I'm just trying to understand it. And Commissioner Allenbrand may have a little bit of information about that since you work in that area.
Or is it okay if I answer?
I'm getting blocked from seeing you there, sorry.
I know, I can't.
Go ahead,
lean
Commissioner Allen.
closer. I'm just about to lay on the, so anyway, I just want you to know, again, I met with the city manager and the mayor of DeSoto, and we took a map, and Adam Norris and myself, we went through the map, and they did not see any issues or that they would even possibly be building any houses there. The owners that own that property have no intention of developing the property. I mean, they may change down the road, but right now they're seeing it more, again, to what Sean said, as wetlands, and it could be parks, or they're not going to develop it. But that doesn't mean they're heirs, because those landowners do have children. Who knows what they might do in the future. But, I feel confident. I feel bad. This has been there. This has been operating in my entire lifetime. And, they've done a good job. The new management team that's there is very, very thorough. And I really appreciate them inviting the public out, seeing, going through, wherever you want to go, we'll take you to show you around. And that they're very aggressive in how can we do better blasts? How can we, we do this from 2 to 4. We don't do it on the weekends. And so I can't say enough, thank you to them. I do realize there's people that live out there that sometimes I feel it, sometimes I don't. But I knew it was there, and I don't know that my realtor told me, but I knew that it was there because I grew up here, so.
Well, a good discussion, and I appreciate everybody's diligence on the questions, and thank you to Mr. Penley, thank you to the applicant. We'll continue. This is a planning item, so it's going to remain on action for next week, and look forward to continuing that discussion then. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Would clerk read item number 8, please?
Consider the approval and ratification of a contract for sale between the Board of Directors of Johnson County Library, JCL, and the City of Merriam, Kansas, in the appraised amount of $3,930,000 for the former Antioch Library and the Library Support Services Building and 2 additional parcels.
Tricia Solentrop, our county librarian, here to discuss this item. Welcome back.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Welcome to Commissioner Brewer. Now that we have finished building and opening our Merriam Plaza building on time and on budget, we turn to the sale of our oldest property. Many of you have asked about the sale of Antioch, so I bring before you the contract for your approval and ratification. The background on this, of course, is that after the Antioch Library closed in January of '24, and then we opened Merriam Plaza, and that property is both the library, support services building, as mentioned, and then there are 2 parking lots. All of that resides on the northwest corner of Shawnee Mission Parkway in Antioch, just for your reference. So we contracted with some independent third-party appraisals over the past couple years. The city also worked with, the City of Merriam also worked with an independent third party to have an appraisal done. And then that's, most recent appraisal is the contract price. We've looked at the library along with our legal, along with the City of Merriam, really worked diligently to figure out this contract for sale. It's an as-is property. The city is, there's no broker fee, and the city is paying the closing cost. Right now, we're looking toward the end of our due diligence, and pending ratification, we would have a February close. I can stand for any questions you might have.
Well, Ms. Solentrop, first of all, let me say congratulations on the point you mentioned preceding the item, the Merriam Plaza Library being on time and on budget. And that's really just a gem. I appreciate the web meeting room there and just the great synergy that library has with the community center, its proximity to City Hall, and really the placemaking that went into that facility. Thank you for that. And I know that took partnership with the City of Merriam.
Yes.
As well as other partners. And so I appreciate the opportunity here to consider this partnership again with trusted partners. And I am glad that the library board has had a chance to review this, and so thank you for bringing it before us. Commissioner Allenbrand.
Thank you, Chair, and very well said. And I am the liaison at this time for the library, even though I feel so bad that, I have conflict of meetings, and then with this meeting, sometimes I don't get to attend, but I did attend this meeting, and I also want you to know that Mr. Logan, your attorney, during this meeting laid out all the legal, talked about the appraisals that had been done, one so professional in laying everything out, and how this was done. And so I was there for that meeting, and I also know that the city of Merriam was a great partner in the community center and was lucky enough to go attend that grand opening. And what a great opportunity, like the library has done that with the city of Lenexa at City Center. So those are great, great partnerships. And I do have to tell you, and I'm just going to be honest, I was in shock when one of the board members brought up, there's never been an appraisal, we were that was being pushed through. And I'm like, okay, well, maybe I missed that whole layout, that was, so well done by Mr. Logan, the attorney. So I do want you to know, I was at that meeting, I heard what was going on, and it was very professional and very well done. And I'm excited to see, I know this is in Commissioner Fast's district, I'm excited to see what's going to go on there, because growing up in Johnson County and seeing what's going on in Shawnee Mission Parkway and that whole development there and seeing all the people going in and out, and I did let, who did I tell? I think it was Erin Wynn about the Krispy Kreme donuts that you can go. Oh, no, it was Miss Karn. She didn't know about it, So what a great opportunity for the city of Merriam, and what great partnership. So I just want you to know I really appreciate, as being the liaison over the library, your professional staff, and I really enjoyed that staff retreat. That was awesome. So it's you guys are doing a great job. So thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Fast.
Yeah, I know that you got the land where the current, Merriam Library is free. Did you get parking too, or did you put money into parking there? I can't.
Shared. So the city built the structure and we pay maintenance.
But you didn't pay to develop the parking structure? No. So I just want to, in our consideration here, that we, in partnership with Merriam, they provided the land for where our current library is and the parking. I mean, maintenance, but parking garages are very expensive. So that was, a net benefit when we went to the new location.
Thank you. Commissioner Ashcraft, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Solentorp, just a few questions. Do you know what Merriam's intended use for this property is?
I would have to refer you to Chris Engel, the city manager.
Okay, well, I've got to call into him. I haven't
Yes.
talked to him yet, so,
Yeah.
okay. The Val Bridge, not proposal.
Appraisal.
Appraisal, thank you. Did we have a professional validation done to see if it was appropriate for the use that they framed?
No.
Okay. There seems to be a bit of a difference between what the county appraiser lists for that price versus what the city of Merriam is proposing. Do we have any understanding as to what that difference is?
We'd have to talk with our appraiser about their assumptions, and then Val Bridge to the assumptions that they make when they appraise that.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Any further questions on this item? Okay, we'll see it next week. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, that's all the items on today's agenda. Thank you all for your patience, and thank you to the board for the collegiality. We will stand adjourned. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.